All right, launchers, we have made it to our very final talk of the day. And what an inspirational day it has been. I mean, I've been seeing you all in the chat. It's been phenomenal. As we gear up for this final session, just put a comment in the chat. How are you feeling? What's your one word check-in for how you're feeling right now? And we'd love to hear the chat and questions keep going as we carry through this very, very final talk. It is my very pleasure to welcome Kelly Ifill to the stage for our last talk, which is Gearing Up for Launch. I'm Ronnie. I'm a product manager at Google, and I also serve as the director of community for Ladies Who Launch. So if you've been listening to our podcast, Real Talk, you can finally put a face to the voice of the podcast. And I'm so thrilled to be elevating another female founder voice. And Kelly today, CEO of Guava, has an amazing opportunity to talk about her platform and how she's been meeting the needs of small Black-owned businesses. Kelly, welcome to Jumpstart, the virtual summit. How are you feeling?
Hi, I'm feeling great. I have my air conditioner going. I have my iced coffee, so I'm happy to be here and excited to talk with you all.
Amazing. I just finished my coffee, so I am all riled up and ready to go. And I don't even want to waste a minute. So with that, let's get started with talking a little bit more about you and your career, Kelly. So I saw that you started your career in education, more specifically a public high school in Brooklyn.
Yeah.
How you got here today and how you landed in this position as CEO of Guava.
Yeah, definitely an untraditional path. I started or was a founding teacher, or one of the founding teachers of a public high school, and I led the math department there for 5 years or 6 years, I'm forgetting now. And I went into international education after that. There was this moment of serendipity though in my career where, all of these ed tech platforms were launching at the same time. So as I was, becoming a teacher and becoming a school leader, I was also using education technology to help students and to help train teachers. And that was always core to my career. And so when I, thought about business school, it was always from that perspective. Like, how can I use all of this teaching experience and make a change and make an impact in the types of tech that was becoming available for students and for teachers? And so that's what took me to business school. I learned really quickly that people didn't care about ed tech as much as they did today. Like, COVID changed the world and specifically that industry. But when I was in business school and talking about ed tech and super riled up about it, nerd, no one else was except the other ed tech nerds. And then just kind of expanded my horizon a bit to more, broad venture capital, and really got, I guess, the kernel for Guava, or the seed for Guava, if I could say that, was a nonprofit that I started with a colleague. We had both worked at impact investing funds and saw, very few founders that looked like us, very few investors that looked like us, and knew that, core to kind of the trajectory of founders is one of these things that you have to do is raise friends and family rounds. But the racial gap makes it super difficult to do that for many people, and specifically for founders of color, Black and Latinx founders, right? And so it has all these downstream effects. If you can't raise $100,000 from your uncle, it means that your business isn't great, your idea is not good, and maybe you're not a good founder. It has all these implications that aren't true, right? None of that is true. It just means that you don't have a rich uncle or whoever to just capital. And so we were making introductions to early stage founders, to angels who can kind of close that gap. And last year, I just had this, I guess, reflective moment. And I think about my career, most of us do early in the new year, that, I talk about the racial wealth gap every day. I was bringing it into my work at the fund. And I felt like I wasn't actually addressing it head on. And more specifically, I was only talking about this tiny sliver of entrepreneurs, venture-backed or venture-backable startups are just, 1% of what entrepreneurship means. And there's this whole swath of entrepreneurs who get left out of the conversation. And I wanted to focus on them. Those were the people that I, were more familiar with. I'm first generation American, so everybody's a small business owner, has some hustle, something.
Heck yes.
I just knew what that experience was like even more than what it meant to be a tech founder and have to raise a friends and family around for, an idea. And so started thinking about Guava and kind of focusing on this segment of entrepreneurs. I'm really excited. And that's my weaving path to Guava.
Yeah. Well, we'll have a little bit more time to talk about Guava, and I'm really glad that you brought up the point around fundraising and how there are also more paths to acquiring fundraising these days, right? We had the Show Me the Money panel earlier today, and I don't think there's a conventional way of doing it anymore. It really is a function of the founder's needs and the team's needs, right? Yeah. And so I know we'll have a lot of time to unpack what that really means for Guava and your community. But one myth that I want to talk about, which really I think you'll have a great insight considering your background, is this idea that nothing prepares you for entrepreneurship. And while I'm sure there's a lot of perseverance and that, the role is glorified to some degree, what do you think about that? Is that true?
No, in a word. There are things that you will have to learn quickly, obviously, but that's any job, and I think to dismiss the years of experience that you've had in your, former lives, professionally or personally, and say that nothing has prepared you for this moment isn't true. I think there are definitely tools that you learn. I was a high school math teacher for 10 years. There were things I learned from that I bring into Guava. Like I can present really well. I feel really comfortable doing those kinds of things. I feel comfortable talking to people. There are all types of things that I bring into my work as an entrepreneur that I, brought from the classroom, that I brought from business school, from previous jobs. And so the idea that none of that is applicable here is a lie to me. And I think something that is, it discourages people for sure, or maybe is meant to discourage people. If nothing else, I was a high school teacher, a school administrator, went to business. Like none of those things should have, in theory, prepared me for each other. But you have transferable skills, and that's the point of it.
Yeah. I think there's also, the only thing I'd add to that is I think there's something to be said about problem solving, right? In each and every one of those roles that you had, it required you taking some form of information, translating that into a plan, some form of a solution, and then acting upon it. That requires some agency, right? And so even in its purest form, right, it's problem solving. No.
I guess you reminded me that the thing that all of my professional experiences kind of have in common is this, there's an unclear path. Nothing was defined. Starting a high school in central Brooklyn is being comfortable with the unknown. And I think I've taken that with me throughout my career. And maybe that made launching a startup a little bit easier because, starting a school to some extent is a little bit harder.
Yeah. Embracing that uncertainty is a huge element of it. And actually, tell me a bit more about it. Like what actually took you to the moment to say, I'm ready to jumpstart into starting Guava and taking that leap of faith?
Yeah, I talk about this with my friends a lot because I don't know that there was a moment. There was this constant questioning. I started with, I wanted to solve for Black small business owners. How do I get capital to their hands? Well, I thought about lending and different sources of capital. Then I thought about, the fact that 80% or something like that of Black small business owners don't have commercial bank accounts. And so, okay, well, if they're not banking with a business checking account, well, will they be ready for a loan? How do I help? How do I go further upstream? And so it was this constant questioning that got me to the point of okay, I know exactly what I'm trying to solve, what I want to build, and talking to people all the time. Small business owners, early last year, I was lucky enough to be able to walk in my neighborhood and things were open. And I live in a neighborhood where there are a lot of small business owners. And like I said, my family are small business owners. So I was able to leverage the relationships that I had and proximity. But leaving my job was not an easy decision at all,
Yeah.
I did raise a small pre-seed round that created a little bit of a cushion for me. But I do think it got to the point where I couldn't do both. Like physically in a day, I was not really sleeping. I work out in the morning and my workout sucked because I wasn't sleeping.
Morning workouts.
It just didn't work in the evening for me. But, you know, that moment of like, I know where my passion is. I was like, you know, sucking at my job. People kind of knew something wasn't right because I no longer had this passion and energy and just started not performing in the same way that I did. And I think that's when I had the moment to, you know, honesty with myself to say, well, Kelly, clearly this is something that you want to spend all of your time on, and you are trying to spend all of your time on it, but you have a day job. And so that was kind of the catalyst for me to make the shift for sure.
Yeah.
But easy, you know, health insurance and a steady paycheck and all of that stuff makes it really, really difficult to pull the trigger.
That's true. And I think there's something to be said about that support system as well, right? Like leaving a corporation and a team and then to really be investing in yourself, right? Yeah. What comes with that is a lot of focus. And now you have 8 or more hours in a day to focus on Guava and what you're building. You know, actually what I'm saying, right? It is. Yeah. You did bring up a question for me around where that motivation stems from. You have committed and dedicated so much of your career to supporting Black and Latinx founders, and you mentioned your family even owning small businesses. Where does that motivation come from for you, and at what point did you feel ready to convert that into Guava?
Yeah, you know, I think there's this through line of just like a core belief in meritocracy. That, and it came, I had it when I was in education that like, you know, I had this thing of like, it shouldn't matter what zip code you live in that determines your educational outcomes. That was,
I love that. It shouldn't matter what zip code you live in. That's great.
It's so true. I mean, I grew up in Brooklyn and we definitely had a different zip code. So I can go to a better school in elementary and middle school. And so when I think about that and how it translates to the experience of a small business owner, getting denied for loans, not getting, you know, the money that they need or the funding that they need, if it's venture capital or traditional lending, getting denied for bank accounts. Like all of these experiences shouldn't happen in a true meritocracy. And I think if I were to weave all of that together, that's really what motivates me, trying to create experiences and places, products that will allow for real meritocracy, that would allow a student to perform at their best ability, regardless of what zip code they came from, that would allow a small business owner to have the best business that they want, regardless of the color of their skin or what zip code, neighborhood their business resides in or who they're serving. And I think that's like true for what we should be striving for in America. But, you know, racism makes it really hard to be truly capitalist, right? Like, the idea that you would deny someone a loan, regardless of, you know, all things being equal, but they're, you know, they're Black, means that you're not actually running your business, your lending business at optimum capacity, right? And so that's kind of how I'm thinking about it and what motivates me, just creating more opportunity and access for people that look like me and that don't have that, even if they don't. Yeah.
I want to save our audience the suspense of what you're working on with Guava. So let's take a moment here for you to actually tell us, what is Guava? What is the mission that you're focused on? And who of our audience should be joining your platform after listening to this talk today?
Thank you for the plug. Guava is a digital bank designed to support Black small business owners. So if you are a small business owner, starting from your first day or, you know, 100th or 1,000th day, you can sign up today and join our wait list for early access to a bank account. The thing that we're really doing differently and that I'm excited about is that we are creating a membership network for the entrepreneurs on the platform. So you sign up for an account, you get a debit card, you get a checking account, all online, really simply and easily. But you also get access to all the small business owners that are in our network. And because you've, you know, gone through this process, we know what type of business you have. We know where your business is located. And so we can make recommendations about who should connect and maybe even about why. And so you can find a mentor, you can find a partner, you can find other businesses to be patrons of, as all within kind of this one ecosystem. So I'm really excited. We're launching this summer. We're in testing now. And I wish I could show you the cards, but they're like in the mail. But they're pretty.
My eyes are peeled and I'm ready to see them when they arrive. So yeah. I will be asking you about that after this. I wanted to, call out something very specific that caught my attention the first time I learned about Guava. And it's actually this banner on the second panel of the website that says, built for community. What does that mean, Kelly? What does it mean to build a product for community?
Yeah. So, okay, you think about your traditional brick and mortar bank. You go there, you go to the teller window. Okay, this may be like 1992. You go to the teller window, you do whatever you need to do, and you walk away. The idea that you don't know who else is banking there, especially if you're a small business owner in this community physically, doesn't make sense, right? Like inherently there's a network of entrepreneurs that can build and grow together. What we're doing is just removing ourselves from the equation, or rather coming in the background and creating a real pathway for entrepreneurs to connect. And so really building a community of entrepreneurs in the bank so that they can all grow together. And I think, there are all these networks, especially when you think about tech companies that, entrepreneur accelerators, all of these things that try to connect founders. But when you think about your Main Street small business owner who has a bakery or a fitness spin cycle center, a hardware store, like there is no accelerator for a hardware store owner. And so we're essentially creating a space for entrepreneurs of all kinds to come and to grow and to connect within the bank. And it just removes a lot of the noise that you find on social media platforms where you don't know if folks really are an entrepreneur or an expert, right? This way, it's all vetted. Everyone has a product and service in the market. You come in with a bio already filled out because we know your name, we know your company, and we're just kind of giving that, demo information to make it really easy for folks to say, oh, I've been looking for a florist in my neighborhood. I can find one really easily. Or I'm planning an event for my business, and maybe, I want to connect with someone else who has, or I'm looking for a mentor. I'm looking to mentor. And so all of that can happen on the platform. So we're really excited to kick it off. So you can sign up at joinguava.com. I saw someone post it in the chat. Thank you. But honestly, it's a commercial bank for any kind of business. So please come and join us. We'd love to have you.
Yeah, well, you are preaching to the choir, as I mentioned, because I love all things community, especially having focused on that for ladies who launch. And I think what's really beautiful about community is that the input is just people. Right? It's the energy, and then seeing that compound into some form of learning, and insights, and then again, seeing that ripple effect in new communities emerging and those relationships, right? Like the mentor-mentee relationships, or, all the local hairdressers having their own form of communication around their best practices. Right?
Yeah. There's like a Senegalese hair braider collective in DC, and I'm just like, guys,
that's just so cool.
Ladies, rather get on the platform. Like those kinds of things happen organically and are in such silos. Like you have to know that there's a Senegalese braiding network in DC to join it, and we're trying to democratize that a little bit. Again, give greater access to entrepreneurs to grow.
Yeah, I am so appreciative of that work. And clearly, I did not know that community existed in DC, so I'm learning a little bit here too. Kelly, a common question that comes up, especially having worked with this very specific Black small business owners community, what have you learned from working with them? What are some of your insights from supporting this community that traditionally has been underserved, right?
Yeah, I mean, I can spit off all the facts that make it, that kind of prove the point of how difficult it is, but there are countless hurdles. From starting a business, whether it's getting a checking account, getting a loan, getting a credit card, those kinds of things require so much more from Black entrepreneurs. As an example, there was a study that showed that took the applications of two small business owners. Everything was the same except breaking someone, and the Black small business owner got a lower loan at a higher interest rate. And so what that means is that not only do you have less capital to grow your business, but you're also paying more for that capital. And it, cost about this woman, Melissa Bradley, she's amazing, has an organization called Eureka Ventures. And she put out a report that said it's about $250,000 more expensive for Black small business owners or Black entrepreneurs to start their business. And so when we talk about undercapitalized, that's what it looks like, right? But I think what you also find is that these entrepreneurs are the most resilient that you'll ever talk to, that they're building more with less is kind of the tagline that I like to think of and like to use for these entrepreneurs, that yes, the system is literally stacked against you, but you've still figured out a way to work around it, to be resilient, to grow, to leave your job, or even to just set out and try something new. It's really exciting. And I think, creating something for those entrepreneurs will hopefully have a positive impact for them and for the communities that they're in.
Yeah. I know one thing we had a chance to talk about prior to this, Kelly, right, has been the attrition of Black Americans from the workforce, right? And the fact that they're leaving at alarming rates. And yes, that is extremely disappointing, but it's also led to this rise in Black American entrepreneurs, right? And I love seeing that activation energy around creating a space that's designed for them, that feels more inclusive. And obviously there's a lot we can learn from how those spaces are created and nourished, but just seeing that potential turn into new communities and new places and businesses, obviously, is beautiful, right?
Yeah. I mean, there are about a little over 3 million Black businesses, and this is census data, so let's increase that by a hair.
Yeah.
But there are only 125,000 employer businesses. And so that means there are only 125,000 businesses that employ other people. And the thing that I think the opportunity for us is to take all of those sole proprietors and help them grow their business, help them operationalize some of the things that they have going to make their first and second and third hire, so that we are really thinking about like job creation with regard to entrepreneurship and really having this domino effect that small business can and should have, right? Because when you think about the impact of, this an unequitable landscape for small businesses, it's not just like that owner or that community or that neighborhood, it's the entire country, right? And right. So you have this like domino effect of an inequity that's affecting all of us. I know that Citi just put out that report last year that said, if lending or small business capital was equitable for Black entrepreneurs specifically, there would be more than like $30 trillion added into. That's not right. That's the wrong number.
It's high. I'll tell you that.
$13 trillion added to the economy over like 25 years. And so like that impacts everybody, right? That's not just that entrepreneur, that community. If you're not Black, you're being impacted by the inequitable access to capital, the inequitable financial system. And so like that is the thing that motivates me. I'm sorry, I don't even know what the question was anymore.
You're totally good. You're totally good, Kelly. And I'm glad you pointed that out, because actually that was one of our goals when we launched our first version of the launch program, the grant program for small businesses. And Elise, who was on one of our panels earlier today, she received a grant from that program. And so it's isolating those areas for need and then offering capacity to help, obviously. We are almost out of time, Kelly. We just went through this so quickly. Before we go into our very last question that we ask all of our LWL amazing female founders, I want to take a moment to actually see a lot of our audience right now are at this moment of jumpstarting. Maybe they are the sole proprietor that you just talked about. Maybe they're thinking about becoming that sole proprietor. What advice do you have for them, specifically for where you were about a year ago when you were founding Guava?
Yeah, I mean, I say this all the time, and not to, repeat myself, but literally people don't know what they're doing. I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing. But I mean, I do. But I think there's this belief that entrepreneurs, founders, business owners have it all figured out. Mm-hmm. The goal really is to know what your next 2, 3, 4 steps are. But that's about it. And make the decision for what's right in front of you with the information that you have. I think it's so discouraging and kind of, for me at least, it hampers me when I think about all the things I don't know. Right? I love to research. I just cited like 12 reports. Obviously, I like to read. I want to know all of the facts. And I think that's true for a lot of female entrepreneurs, that we want it to be perfect, that we want to know everything and be able to answer every single question before we even like show it to our friends. Yeah. And, you know, really just like, not to slap something together, but I think, you know, really be able to answer the core questions and be okay saying, I don't know yet, and I'll figure it out. Like, you're intelligent, you're smart, you work hard. If this is like, if you're at this conference or at this summit, you are a hard worker and you're smart, and so you'll figure it out. And so I think that's like the thing that I would tell myself that would have gotten me to probably leave faster, honestly.
Yeah. One thing I always remember, and truthfully, I can't remember who told me this now, but you don't need to have the directions. You just need to know the destination, right? Yeah. You need to know what path you're trying to go down, but you don't need to know where to take the left turn, how many miles to go down on that road. You can kind of wing it. And that's where conviction and confidence and trust in ourselves also comes up, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. You know, and I think, you know, having one of the things that you learn as a professional in any job is how to say, I don't know, how to wing it, how to like quickly figure it out and come back with something that like is presentable. And I think all of those things, being able to think on your feet and be resourceful, are going to take you so much further than we give it credit, you know?
Yeah. I realize we're at time, but I do want to ask, because I realize so many people might be thinking the same thing I am. How do you say, I don't know, in a way that, you know, feels respectable for you?
It depends on the question, but I'm often like, oh, that's a really great question. Let me get back to you. Mm-hmm. Or sometimes I say, I'm not quite sure yet, but I'll get back to you. You know, you kind of just say like, don't just say, I don't know and leave it at that, but just say like, it's something that is worth looking into, and I'll start back to you and actually follow up and do that and say like, thought about your question. Here's, you know, a reference point for how I'm thinking about it, or I put some more thought into what you asked, and here's what I've come up with. And I think people really respect that, you know, instead of, you know, BSing your way through it, because we all see through that stuff, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. And my favorite thing to do is, I don't know, let's make it a discussion, right? We can help problem solve this together.
That's a good one.
Yeah. All right. Well, we end all our Ladies Who Launch events with one question, Kelly, which is, what is one action you want every woman entrepreneur to take this week?
I ask for something that makes you uncomfortable. It's something that I struggle with, but I'm always pushing myself to ask, you know, for the discount, for the meeting, for the interview, for whatever it is that makes you feel a little bit uncomfortable to ask for it.
You've got me thinking about what's made me uncomfortable this week. That is great advice. Thank you so much, Kelly, for joining us today. And honestly, for everyone who's still here today, for our audience who's been so interactive and chiming in from, you know, wherever you might be in the US or beyond, I want to thank everyone, especially the incredible women like Kelly and everyone who was on here earlier today, for sharing their entrepreneurial journeys, because I realize that's not an easy thing to do. And you made time to create that space for more women. So thank you very much. And for our audience, you are taking the first step to jumpstarting your career and your entrepreneurial journey. So we're excited to share this moment with you.
Yes, thank you all for having me.
Of course. We know it's a challenging time out there. And as our co-founder, Sarah Fryer, says, women founders are training at altitude, and we need to get them off the damn mountain. We hope these summits and connections make you today, help you reach that peak that you've been imagining. And as Julie has mentioned a number of times today, if you haven't already, go over to the networking tab. We have a goal for everyone. Maybe Kelly and I will hop in there for a few minutes ourselves. We have a goal today to actually meet 5 women founders today. And so really try to make those connections and find your accountability partners. We also have the LWL Expo booth, where any of the summit attendees, you can be selected for a photo shoot for your business. styling services from White House Black Market. I see you, Kelly. I see you raising your eyebrows at that. To get you out of your sweatpants and founder ready. And of course, a one-on-one session with the LWL team. One final thank you I want to make today to all our partners who've been very committed to supporting LWL and this summit, including White House Black Market, Shasta VC, Le Grand Courtage, Greylock, Benchmark, and Bank of America. Thank you, everyone, for joining. And we really hope you feel empowered to take on the world. And we are here to learn about what you're dreaming, building, launching, and growing. Thank you so much.